Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are looking at a stack of sources that identifies the single greatest obstacle to, well, to just about everything. Achievement, resilience, personal fulfillment.
And the surprising answer isn't the competition or the economy or even your boss.
No, it's you.
Yeah.
Specifically, it's your ego. We're diving into this internal enemy that just wrecks careers, relationships, even empires.
And that definition is, it's crucial to get right from the start. We're not talking about the Freudian id or superego or anything like that.
Right, this is much more practical.
It's simpler and, honestly, far more destructive. It's an unhealthy belief in our own importance. It's arrogance. It's self-centered ambition.
Think of it like that voice in your head.
Exactly. That nagging, often loud inner voice telling you the rules don't apply or that you're already much better than you actually are. The material calls it the petulant child inside every person.
A petulant child that constantly tries to distort reality. That's a perfect frame for this.
It is.
So our mission for you today is to track exactly how this toxic force changes its appearance as we move through life. We're going to follow ego across 3 stages: aspiration, success, and failure.
And we'll look at some fascinating examples, people who managed it like General Sherman, even Genghis Khan.
And the spectacular cautionary tales, people like Howard Hughes and John DeLorean, who just let it completely destroy their lives.
It really is a roadmap of self-awareness, and that first stage, aspiration, is arguably where we're most vulnerable.
Why there specifically?
Because that's when we have the least to actually back up our claims.
Okay, let's start there. The loudest symptom of ego and aspiration. The sources call it the temptation to talk, talk, talk. When you have a new idea, a project, a goal, what's the first instinct?
To share it, to get the hype going, to tell everyone.
Why is that so dangerous?
Fundamentally.
It's a physical drain. It uses up the very energy you need for the genuine creative work. Ego loves to substitute hype for execution.
The sources talk about this concept of the resistance. Can you break that down for us? Absolutely. The resistance is, it's that internal psychological force that fights against any attempt at real creative work or growth. It's inertia, but with a toxic personality.
So when you talk about your plans,
You feel validated. You feel like you've already done something. And that verbalization, it just depletes the psychic energy you need to actually sit down and battle the resistance to do the work.
you see this play out constantly in the modern age. I'm thinking of the example of the writer Emily Gould.
Oh, yeah, that's a perfect one.
She had a 6-figure book deal, a huge opportunity, but the novel just stalled.
Completely. Because she was too busy, as the source says, tumbling, tweeting, and scrolling. She was confusing all that intense internet activity, that performance, with real progress.
She was burning her creative fuel on validation.
Exactly, and this is why the sources insist that silence is strength. It was the philosopher Kierkegaard who warned that talking about something that's still just a thought, it weakens the action by forestalling it.
So the person who's truly confident, who doesn't need the external cheerleaders,
They're often the quietest. They get that talking and doing are fighting for the exact same finite resources.
this brings us to a key inflection point, a choice that strategist John Boyd laid out. He called it the choice to be or to do.
This is such a critical fork in the road, especially early in a career. Boyd told these young officers, you have 2 paths.
Okay.
One way, you can be somebody. That means you're prioritizing titles, promotions, playing politics, compromising, fitting in.
And the other way.
The other way, you can go that way and you can do something. And that is focused entirely on purpose, on truth, on making a difference, even if you miss out on the biggest paycheck or the highest rank.
And ego, by its very nature, just makes us fall desperately in love with the image of success.
The corner office, the impressive job title, the number of followers.
Right. The image, not the substance of the work itself.
Precisely. The person who succeeds in aspiration chooses humility and reality. Just look at William Tecumseh Sherman.
Okay. The Civil War general.
When the war started, he was offered superior command, big promotions, but he turned them down. He refused the rank because he felt he wasn't ready.
That is so counterintuitive. We're all taught to grab the next rung on the ladder.
But he was more comfortable as a number 2. He wanted to earn the responsibility, not just grasp for the title. His rise was slow and gradual.
So he built his confidence step by step.
Exactly, which is what allowed him to later execute his famous, incredibly high-risk march to the sea. His realism meant he wasn't baited by critics or focused on shows of strength.
So the takeaway for you, listening, is to act and live small in aspiration.
Focus on iterative steps. Focus on your education, not on getting validation. It's about one foot in front of the other, not how far you can leap.
And if you can keep that ego in check, you eventually hit success, which paradoxically brings a whole new, far more dangerous set of challenges.
It really does, because success immediately creates this pressure to pretend we know everything. The sources call it scientia influx.
Knowledge puffs up.
Knowledge puffs up. We get comfortable, we stop challenging our methods, we stop being students.
And the ultimate counterexample to this arrogance of success is, surprisingly, Genghis Khan.
Yeah, we think of him as this ruthless conqueror, which he was, but the sources identify him as a perpetual, incredibly pragmatic student.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, think about the humility it takes for a conqueror to admit that other cultures have better technology. Khan's victories weren't just about his cavalry.
Wow.
No. They were based on his willingness to ruthlessly appropriate the best tech from every culture he encountered. He used Chinese engineers for siege machines. He adopted the decimal system for his army from Turkic tribes.
So he was willing to abandon the arrogance that his way was the best way.
That is the ultimate anti-ego move. To
Yeah.
stay a true student, you have to actively seek discomfort.
The martial artist Frank Shamrock had a system for this.
He did. A student must seek out people better than them, A+, people lesser than them, A-, and people equal to them.
Just to ensure you're always learning.
Always. The moment your ego tells you you've graduated, learning stops. Stagnation begins.
This also applies to how we frame our own achievements. We love the narrative of the instant genius.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at Bill Walsh, the legendary 49ers coach. Won a Super Bowl just 3 years after taking over the worst team in football. But he refused to say he had some grand plan.
Walsh knew that narrative was the enemy of execution. He was obsessed with his standard of performance.
Not a vision, but details.
Minutiae. Tucking in shirts, 30 specific drills for linemen. He believed if the execution was perfect, the score takes care of itself. He refused the genius title because he knew that story prevents learning.
And it allows for complacency.
Exactly what happened. His players slacked off after their first Super Bowl because they bought into the genius's story.
So if Walsh is the model for handling success, Howard Hughes is the ultimate cautionary tale.
A total tragedy. Here was a mechanical genius, inherited massive wealth.
And his life's work ended up resembling a deranged crime spree.
It's a case study in what the sources call the disease of me. His ego, fueled by fame, made him immune to reality. He wasted hundreds of millions on prestige projects like the Spruce Goose.
The giant plane that flew once.
Flew once, then sat in a hangar costing $1 million a year. Meanwhile, he totally abandoned the profitable tool company he inherited. Success just magnified his worst impulses.
It forces you to ask, can you handle success? Or will it be the worst thing that ever happens to you?
And for that, there's a powerful antidote in General George C. Marshall.
Okay.
He consistently prioritized the mission over his own honors. He actively discouraged promotions early in his career.
But the ultimate act was giving up the D-Day command.
Unimaginable, right? He'd trained his whole life for that job, but he yielded to Eisenhower because he knew the decision had to serve the country, not his personal ambition. His confidence was so solid, he didn't need the recognition.
It really perfectly encapsulates that quote from Tony Adams.
Play for the name on the front of the jersey and they'll remember the name on the back.
When the mission is bigger than your glory, ego loses its grip.
It has to.
But inevitably, every life, every career arrives at the third stage.
Yeah.
Failure, adversity.
And this is where you're forced into a critical psychological choice between two types of time.
Alive time or dead time.
Exactly. When adversity hits, you get laid off, a project fails. Ego loves dead time. That's waiting, complaining, blaming.
It's passive.
Totally passive. Alive time is the opposite. It's learning, acting, using every second to prepare for the next opportunity, no matter what's happening now.
The example of Malcolm X is just so powerful here.
10 years in prison for armed robbery.
And he used it as his college. He copied the dictionary by hand. He read history, philosophy. He said later he had never been so truly free in his life.
He was completely focused on self-improvement. He took a decade that was out of his control and redefined it by choosing a lifetime.
And this choice, it deeply informs how we handle external validation, or the lack of it.
Yes. The story of the Roman general Belisarius is a powerful lesson. He served this paranoid emperor. Justinian delivered incredible victories.
And his reward.
He was repaid with suspicion, humiliation, they stripped him of his wealth, all because the emperor was scared of his popularity.
So how did he cope with that betrayal?
He just kept performing his duty. The philosophy he lived by is that we have only minimal control over recognition, applause, rewards.
So the measure of success has to be internal.
It has to be your own standards, doing the right thing regardless of the outcome. Belisarius never complained because the effort of doing the work was enough reward in itself.
That contrasts so heartbreakingly with the author John Kennedy Toole.
Oh, that's a tough one. His masterpiece, A Confederacy of Dunces, was rejected over and over.
And he couldn't handle that external judgment.
He committed suicide, and of course the book later won the Pulitzer Prize.
And the essential lesson there is that the quality of the book was exactly the same the day before it won as it was the day he died.
External validation isn't the measure of quality. It's often just luck or timing. Ego cannot accept that.
And the final, most toxic form of ego in failure is escalation.
John DeLorean.
His revolutionary car company was failing because of his own mismanagement. And his response wasn't humility or reflection.
No, it was to arrange a $60 million cocaine deal to try and save face.
That's the fork in the road, isn't it? Failure says something about our project.
But ego worries that failure says something irreparable about us as a person. DeLorean was so desperate to avoid that shame, he escalated into criminality.
The antidote to that spiral is, of course, resolution, which we see in Steve Jobs after he was fired from Apple.
Right. He didn't quit. He didn't blame everyone. He didn't descend into madness like Hughes or crime like DeLorean. He worked.
Founding NXT and Pixar.
And he worked until he not only proved himself again, but crucially resolved the flaws that had caused his downfall to begin with. That requires profound self-honesty, the opposite of ego.
So we've covered the whole cycle. Aspiration leads to success and adversity. Success creates new adversity. Adversity leads back to aspiration.
And ego just makes every single step of that loop infinitely harder. It makes failure feel permanent.
That's why training against it has to be a daily thing. I love the metaphor from Daniel Bolelli.
Sweeping the floor.
Sweeping the floor. Just because you've done it once doesn't mean the dust is gone forever.
It has to be swept every minute of every day. Ego is that dust.
And what we learn from all these figures, from Marshall to Malcolm X, is that perfecting the personal being humble, selfless, balanced, that regularly leads to professional success.
But it rarely, if ever, works the other way around. Achieving professional success almost never automatically leads to that personal fulfillment we're all looking for.
And here's the profound final insight the source material leaves us with. The ultimate consequences of ego are often not catastrophic or external.
They're internal, and they're inescapable. The vengeance for a life of ruthless, ego-driven ambition, the punishment is already there.
An empty marriage, paralyzing insecurity, fear, a total inability to just be still or content.
That's the real price.
So if you are constantly striving for those external rewards, the title, the fame, the money, what are you sacrificing internally? And will you realize the cost of that spiritual emptiness before the end? That is the question the sources ultimately challenge you to answer.